I actually, and here, let's go to barrel since we're done with muzzles. I actually used to run this attachment before I figured out about the monolithic suppressor and before I learned about the compensator. So I used to run the Spetsnaz Elite because of the bullet velocity. It says it increases your bullet velocity in the game, and the only downside I think is just the aim down sight time. So I was like, oh, that's a pretty good trade-off. I get to have a little bit more accurate of a gun for just a little bit of aim down sight time. But again, first of all, so the monolithic I think was 9%. So it kind of evens out. You get 9% aim down sight add for 20, and then for this you get 6.3 for 12. But again, for the same reasons I was just talking about, like it's not really worth running this. The range bonus is obviously pointless. Like unless you're playing core modes, in core modes this would be a pretty decent attachment overall. But yeah, we kind of already explained all this, so that's why you don't really want to run this attachment. It's not bad, it's just not good. The RPK barrel, you can see it does a ton of things it doesn't even tell you it does in the game. So it, no no or no it does. Sorry. So it doesn't say anything about your aim down sight movement speed being penalized for using this. And it doesn't say anything about hip fire area. So your hip fire area is like we were talking about. So instead of having a hip fire area like this big, now it's this big. It's 67% bigger. That's huge. So let's just look at it. So look at that. It's 22.4 degrees wide now. And what was it before? It was 13.2. So you basically doubled the hip fire area of your gun. That's terrible. Obviously, if you're just going to want to be like mounting on stuff all game or like, basically camping, then you're not really going to worry about that. But nah, like first of all, that playstyle is not good. Like you don't want to be doing that, especially for kill confirmed. But yeah, I mean, let's just talk about this. So yeah, so the RPK barrel, it gives us 25% range, which again we don't care about in hardcore. It gives us a ton of bullet velocity, so you might be like, oh well, that's a good benefit. Which again, it doesn't tell you that it gives you better bullet velocity. But again, like we were saying, like we don't for this gun we don't need to worry about bullet velocity increasing attachments. But we get a ton of aim down sight time, so you're really going to feel that. You're going to be moving even slower. So all it says in the game is that it decreases your movement speed, but it doesn't say it decreases your sprint speed. So again, let's equip it and look. So you can see our base movement speed goes down and our sprint speed, but our tactical sprint speed doesn't get affected, which is kind of strange. I don't think there's any attachments that decrease your tactical sprint speed. Which is kind of funny if you ask me. I think it should be a little bit slower, but whatever. And then your aim down sight movement speed is slower too. So when you're aiming and moving, you're going to be even slower. So I mean, obviously that's a terrible attachment. Like you don't want to be running that because and again, it's all it says in the game is that it helps your vertical. What does it say? Recoil compensation. Well, it does both. So, but that's only a couple percentage points. Like, yeah, you'll be able to feel that a little bit, but that's so insignificant compared to all the downsides you get. These are terrible, terrible downsides. You don't run this attachment. It's terrible. You don't want to be prioritizing something that increases your range or your recoil in hardcore for the most part. So the 8.1 compact barrel, I tried this out a little bit. I ultimately decided it's not very good. So we get a minus 20% range, which is irrelevant because the AK-47's base damage is so strong it'll always kill in one shot anyway. We get a ton of aim down sight speed, so it's super fast when it aims. We get a little bit of movement speed, a little bit of sprint speed, and a little bit of aim down sight movement speed, which isn't very much. It's only 4%. Instead of 10% like up here. And then our bullet velocity gets killed by 31%, which I was like, okay, well I could run this and maybe like the monolithic suppressor, to kind of compensate for it. But we also get a little bit worse recoil, which isn't the worst. 14%, I mean, that's a noticeable difference. But again, you should be able to compensate any gun. Like you should have a gun that just shoots straight up in the air. But if you're good enough, it's high risk, high reward. Just because the gun shoots super all over the place, you should be able to control it, and you should be able to get good enough with that gun that you get all the benefits of the other stuff, and then you only have to worry about the recoil, theoretically. Again, it doesn't say anything about hipfire being better in the game, but it actually makes your hipfire better by 6%. So, see that number? It was like 14, I think. I keep forgetting these numbers. or sorry, it was 13, and then it went down to 12. So it makes our hip fire just a tiny bit better. That's not, that's not too noticeable. But overall, this attachment just isn't good. Maybe if the movement speed was a little bit better, and maybe especially if the velocity wasn't such a killer, that's what really kills it. Now I'll run this attachment on, like, I have like a shipment class for this, you know what I mean, or not shipment, like Rust or something. Obviously if you're playing on a smaller map, for the most part, we're not going to be talking about smaller maps like Shipment or like Rust or something, because those are just like chaos maps. There's not really any skill or strategy to them. But yeah, so overall, you're really not going to want to run this one. So basically all the barrels for the most part are just terrible. This Romanian barrel is just the same as this one, except it's even worse in my opinion. So you get 18% worse aim down sight here. You get 27% aim down sight time worse. And you get a worse movement speed, which I don't think is too much different. Or no, whoa, that's weird. Okay, so here you go. This one is actually worse for your movement speed, and this one's just a tiny bit better. Yeah, so all the movement speeds on this one are actually worse. Or no, I'm sorry, I'm saying that wrong. This one, for some reason, has a better aim down sight movement speed penalty than this one does. So that's the cool thing about the sight. There's so many just strange differences, but you get a ton of bullet velocity. So what? Only about 13% more bullet velocity for this, which isn't again that big of a deal. And the vertical recoil control and the horizontal recoil control. Now, you also have to consider that this barrel makes it to where you can't put any underbarrel attachments on it, because the barrel of the gun comes with a built-in grip. So yeah, you're getting that benefit, but is it worth it to you? I mean, overall, I wouldn't be running this anyway, because you don't want to be aiming that slowly. You don't want to be moving that slowly. That's terrible. Especially with the hip. I mean, see, that's the other thing too. This one actually makes your hip fire worse by 1 percentage point worse, and then this one. But you don't want to be running this. Again, the main benefit for most players is going to be the recoil control. You don't need to be running attachments that hurt you this bad just for some recoil control. Remember the compensator? The compensator does almost the same amount of recoil control, maybe 6% less, but there's no downside basically. Like, no downside. That aim down sight time is nothing. Like, you get all the benefit for no drawback at all. This is all terrible, terrible drawbacks. So kind of get an idea with the barrels here, so let's move on to the lasers. The lasers are really cool. So the 1 milliwatt laser is the red laser. That's the one that enemies can't see. So the laser is only going to be visible. It'll be visible to you, but the enemies won't be able to see it. And then when you aim down sight, the I don't know why I keep saying that. The laser will turn off. So the 1 milliwatt laser is literally all benefit for zero drawback at all. So there's almost no reason to ever not be running this on a class. I'm always running lasers. So we get a really, really good 32% hipfire area reduction. So look at that. It was like 12. Now it's all the way down to 9. So that's really tight, and there's no drawback. So, and hardcore, it's also kind of nice because you don't have a reticle in the middle of the screen, so you don't know where it is. But with this, it's like, hey, I have a general idea of where the middle of the screen is. Now you have to know this though. I used to think that the laser actually pointed at the very middle of the screen. It doesn't. Depending on the gun, I think for most guns, it actually points to the right. So you need to remember that. If the laser, wherever the laser is, it's actually pointing to the right of the middle of the screen. So it's not accurate. So yeah, the 1 milliwatt laser you should almost always be running no matter what if you don't want to choose anything else. Now the 5 milliwatt laser is the one I run the most because it's just so much better. So the 5 milliwatt laser decreases our sprint to fire speed by 18.4%. That's huge. And we also get even better hip fire area. So look at that. Now it's all the way down to 5.3. That's super tight. That, like, roughly that's like this big. That is not big at all. That, like, you can get very reliable hip fire kills. So another thing I'll mention here is that when you jump and when you slide, your hip fire box actually goes huge for a while. While you're in the air and while you're still sliding, your hip fire will get gigantic. This will make that even better. So you can slide more efficiently and you can jump shot more efficiently. That's a huge benefit. And then, so it says it increases or makes our sprint to fire even better. Well, that's our sprint to fire speed and our tactical sprint to fire speed. So we can run around and get our gun ready to shoot really, really, really quickly. So here, let's take it off. So you see it's 250 milliseconds and 375, and now it's 200 and 300. Like that's a huge difference. That's like 150 milliseconds right there gone, and then 50 I think from there, right? Or no, that's almost 175 gone right there. Or am I stupid? Was it 300? I'm sorry, it was 75, about 70 milliseconds here. So that's almost one third or like one fourth faster right there. So that's a big benefit. Obviously, the only downside with this is that the enemies can see the laser. But here's the thing: if you're playing aggressively, like super aggressively, like I am, you're not gonna have your gun in the hip fire position unless you're firing at somebody most of the time. And then if you're not, all you have to do is aim your gun. When you aim your gun, the laser turns off. So you can aim walk. So now you're moving quieter, you're accurate, and the laser's not on. So if you're running, if you're sprinting and you're tactical sprinting, the laser turns off so nobody can see it. And for the most part, the laser's pretty dull. It's going to be kind of hard to see it. It's not impossible. Like I can definitely tell when somebody's aiming a laser, but like overall, unless you're just sitting in a corner or like being reckless and showing your laser to everybody, most people aren't going to be able to detect you in the midst of a gunfight, like to tell exactly where you are. So basically, it's even better benefit, with a small drawback. Now the tactical laser, I think this is what the pros use. I don't know why. This is a stupid attachment. So this is why I was explaining the other thing earlier. So I was saying how when you're tactical sprinting, it's going to take 306 milliseconds for your character to stop and get into firing position. So he's going to be able to fire in 306 milliseconds here, and then it'll take him another 271 milliseconds to aim down the sight, right? So we've already made it better with the 5 milliwatt, so now we can fire from running even quicker, right? So let's put on this one. All right, so we're back to normal values here, right? And now we have 234 milliseconds on our aim down sight time. So it's honestly the same thing, right? So I'm actually going to be able to kill somebody faster, right? So just because I can aim down sight faster, that's only if I'm just moving. If I'm just moving around the map, I can aim that much faster, which is a good amount, but not too much. But the problem is that if I'm running and I try to aim, it's going to take me longer because I have a longer sprint to fire and tactical sprint to fire speed. So the tactical laser is actually worse, in my opinion. I'd never, ever, ever run this thing because not only does the laser show up when you aim with this one, so you can hip fire and nobody will see, but if you aim, somebody's going to see you. And, that's a huge drawback because it's like, okay, well, now I can't move around quietly or try to get a target lined up in my sights without them seeing that I'm aiming at them. So that's a huge downside. And I can't be more aggressive because I don't have a quick sprint to fire speed. So if I'm just moving around the map regular speed and trying to aim, then I guess you won't have to worry about that. But you want, especially in Hardcore Kill Confirmed, you want to be moving around like this to pick up tags. So here, okay, so the game does say sway magnitude. So this is how far that circle is. So he's still swaying like pretty fast, right? That's not your sway speed. This is our sway magnitude. So normally it's like this, and with this attachment, it'll make it like this. So yeah, it's a little more accurate, but again, in hardcore, when everything kills in one shot, you don't need to worry about that because, again, you yourself should be able to compensate for the sway. Like it's not that big a deal. Sway magnitude is just kind of an irrelevant stat. It's not irrelevant, but it's definitely not important unless you're like using a sniper rifle or something. But so that's a pretty good breakdown of the lasers there. The optics are extremely interesting. So again, you can see here the game just straight up lies to you. So all optics below 2.1 times, they don't give you any kind of recoil benefit. So this is the operator reflex. It increases your aim down sight speed a little bit. But you're not really going to notice that, and you get, you don't have to use the iron sight to get that. Same with this one. It's a little bit higher zoom, but you get worse aim down sight. Same with this one. Well, no, see, and that's the weird thing, right? So this one's one-time zoom in, and so is this one, but it makes your aim down sight 4.8%. So it's really weird. Some of these attachments do the exact same thing, but they hurt you differently. So, and this is all different on every gun. So the operator reflex might actually do, 5% increase on this gun, and then this one does 3. So this game is just so weird. It just decides which attachments do what. So you would want to run this one always instead of this one because it's worse and it does the same thing. Now the Scout Optic, look at that. It increases our vertical and horizontal recoil control, and for a huge increase into our aim down sight time. But it doesn't say that. All it says is that it reduces your aim down sight speed, and that's it. But you get an optic. Well, the higher zoom the optic, the better this recoil control is for the most part. So again, let's go down here. So we've got the well, see, yeah, look at that. We've got 1.3 times here, which is a very minuscule difference. I mean, it's basically the combat, hollow sight here. For this instance with the AK, you basically always want to be running this one. So far, there's other ones down here, but this one is just better. Yeah, you get like 0.2% or 0.2 more zoom, but that's like hardly noticeable. So. And look at that. Here we go. So this one right here is actually the best 1 times here. So we get 1.5, which is nothing. That's you're never going to notice that. It's a 1 times optic, but it's not 3% like this 1 times optic. So the Solaraz Optics Mini Reflex is the best 1 times zoom right here. So now we've got the integral, which is the one where you can switch between the 2 zooms. It's a huge increase to the aim down sight time. But look at that, we get vertical recoil control and horizontal. But you can see here, we have the same zoom. Obviously, the benefit here is that you can switch between them, but you get a huge increase to your aim down sight time and not as good vertical and horizontal. So I should say this now. You basically never want to be running optics on any gun, like ever. And I mean if the irons are terrible. If a gun is good but has terrible iron sights, you just have to get over it. There's no reason to make your gun slower just because you can't get over the iron sights. Now, however, I would maybe make an exception for this one because you're not going to notice. Like this is such an immeasurable change that I would say, okay, maybe if they're that bad, maybe you could put these on. But that's only if your other 5 attachments, like there's nothing else you could use it for. But you don't want to be running this because the problem is that the optics in this game actually obstruct more than they should. Like the optic is supposed to make the screen clearer, but in this game they're just so bulky and they make your gun slower and they just get in the way. Like I honestly hate the optics. I'll only ever run mini reflexes if I want. Like I'll never go higher than 1 times zoom optics because they're all terrible. So let's keep going. The VLK. So here you go. It's basically the same as a Scout, except that it gives you the same vertical control and horizontal, but for less aim down sight time. I mean, and that's the other thing too. I don't know why it says the 3 times optics because it's only 2 times. It gives you a 2.3 zoom, so it's not 3 times or 2. It's 2.3. This game is just so weird. And then the sniper scope, obviously, it has scope glint because it's a sniper rifle or a sniper scope. But look at that. We get a huge. I mean, that's gigantic. That's a bunch of aim down sight time. So you definitely don't ever want to run that. Sniper scopes, for the most part in this game, are just terrible. The fact that they have glint and they slow your gun down super, like a lot. Yeah, that's a terrible attachment. Here, you got the Viper Reflex, same as the first one. It gives you 3, but it's not as good as that other one that does 1.5. So, there's that. And then the GI, hey, look at that. There's another one I want to use. I would actually rather use this one because I like the GI. It's a little like smaller. It's less obstructive than the Solaraz, Solo Zero, whatever. So there's that. And man, look at that. This is, again, I was talking about in the other episode why you do not want to run night vision goggle enhanced thermal scopes or any thermal scopes. Look at that, 30%. I mean, it's not as bad as 35, but that's such a huge drawback. And the scope, again, it blocks the screen. It makes everything all fuzzy through the scope, and you get a little bit of recoil control, but who cares? That's so small, you don't even want to be worrying about that. Just never run thermals. Look at that downside. That's a huge downside. You're going to be so slow, you're not even going to be able to aim your gun before somebody kills you. The monocle is a really good sight on this gun too, because the monocle is pretty clear. Actually, I take everything I said back. I think I might actually run the monocle on the AK, because the benefit with the monocle is that the sight isn't installed on the gun on the bottom. It's usually equipped on the side, And what I mean by that is like when you aim with the GI reflex sight, right? It has that little bottom part that's attached to the rail of the gun, so that can actually obstruct you if you're trying to see something below, like where you're aiming. So the monocle, you can see the bottom, but it's like blocking the side a little bit. So that is actually more important to me personally because most of the time I aim a I'm trying to like you'll see me when I play. I'll actually aim the gun, and it looks like I'm not aiming at a target. I'm aiming off to the side, but that's because I'm trying to get the benefit of the zoom of the screen, and I'm just trying to see things in front of me. And then when I see something I want to shoot, I'll just quickly aim at them. Maybe you could say that's a flaw, but it's really not. But that's kind of that's whatever. Here's another 1.1 times. There you go. It's 3%, not 1.5. Another hybrid sight, huge aim down sight, but for a little bit of recoil and two sights. Like here's the other thing with the canceled hybrid sights. Like you don't need to be switching between them like that. Like there's no reason to like. Again, the game is not designed to where that's useful. Like you're realistically never gonna be like, oh, I need to zoom far away so I can shoot that guy, and oh now it's a close guy and now I want to shoot now. Like just shoot the guy. You don't need a scope to shoot somebody. You don't need to switch. Just shoot them. Like Call of Duty is not that hard to shoot people. You do not need a sight to do this. You're going to be wasting time switching between the sights just to maybe shoot a guy before he's already ran away and you can't even see him anymore. So the Cronin here, it's 14 times, So basically these are all the same. Merc Thermal, huge increase, little recoil. All these have little different values in recoil and aim down sight and stuff. You can see. I mean, variables. Look at that. Oh my. That's just gigantic. Obviously, you're not going to want to really be running a scope on an AK anyway. But that's just for like all guns. That's freaking terrible. Hybrid. There you go. So the sights are all pretty garbage. Again, the benefit to the recoil control is not worth any of these aim down sights. Again, let's remember, the compensator gives you a ton of recoil control for no downside. So yeah, if you want recoil control that badly, just use the compensator. Okay, let's put on my attachment. That's the one I use on the AK. So we're not running an optic because optics are dumb. Alright, so stocks. So again, some of these stocks say they like make your aim stability better and whatnot. Now these ones, thankfully, you can see that. See, that's where I was confused with the other, like the flash guard, I think, or the muzzle brake, because I don't know if it's because they didn't test it or the game just simply does not change that variable. So I assume that it just doesn't change that variable, even though it says it does. But you can see here we can see the sway magnitude and the sway speed because in the game this attachment says it helps your aiming stability and it makes your aim walk movement speed worse. Well, you can see, there you go, aim walk movement speed and then sway speed. So I used to run the skeleton stock on the AK because I wanted that aim down sight speed and the aiming movement speed, because the only downside it says in the game is it just makes your aiming stability worse. So I'm like, that's not a big deal. I can move faster and aim faster just for a little bit of like more of a shaky gun. Like I could compensate myself for that, so that's no problem. But I did not realize until I used this sight how godly the no stock attachment is. This is such a great attachment. This is why we don't run the compact barrel that we were talking about before. So we get a better aim down sight time, boom, almost double. We get better movement speed, better sprint speed, better aim down sight movement speed, even better, and we just get some recoil control and a better hip fire. Like the no stocks, almost always on the guns, the no stock will always help your hip fire. Again, just like the compact barrel. So we get 33% vertical and horizontal recoil control. Need I remind you? 27%. So overall, we're only getting a 6% recoil control on the AK. That's nothing. You can compensate for that. That's the main reason I run the compensator, because with the no stock, yeah, the gun kicks quite a bit, But now we get we get all the benefit. We get the little benefit from the sway speed here. And so that's irrelevant. We're not even worrying about that because it's so minuscule it doesn't even exist. So we get the little bit of sway speed that's better. And now we get all of this benefit, and this is basically canceled out by the compensator. So we get all that. Look at how good that is. That's such a huge benefit. You're going to be moving around picking up tags like crazy. You can aim faster. You can aim and walk faster. So if you're trying to be quiet or aim on somebody, like this is an amazing attachment. I almost always run this no stock attachment on all the guns now because they almost perform the same way. Like it's just such a great attachment. It says it reduces your aiming stability, um, but again, it doesn't say that it does here. I think it does. Like in the game, I can like see the difference. Like it definitely makes the gun shakier, but it's not even that bad. It really is not that bad. Um, so yeah, I'm not going to really go through all these attachments like I was before because you kind of get the idea. You just want to basically like when you're making a gun class, definitely get on this site. It has so much useful information. It'll make you look at the like you can make the perfect class with any gun. You know, it's just so cool seeing all this information. So like obviously like yeah, I mean this is kind of nice. You know, like again, aiming stability isn't that bad, but like it's like, oh, I get 18% movement speed. It's like, okay, well, you can literally just run the skeleton stock, get less sway magnitude, get less sway speed for just 1% less of aim down sight movement speed, and you get the aim down sight. So obviously, you basically never want to run this attachment. This one is basically complete garbage, and this one's superior in every way, you know? So you can just find cool stuff like that. It just, like, this site makes certain attachments just completely worthless.